The police station smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Sarah sat handcuffed in a cold interrogation room, her surgical incisions screaming with every breath. 7 days post-surgery, and she was being treated like a criminal instead of a donor recovering from major surgery. The door slammed open. 2 detectives entered, one older with gray hair and tired eyes, the other young and ambitious-looking. "Sarah Montgomery," the older detective said, dropping a file on the table. "You're in serious trouble." "I didn't do anything wrong," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "I donated my kidney to save someone's life." "You manipulated a vulnerable man for personal gain," the younger detective countered. "Mrs. Isabella Kim has provided testimony that you've been stalking her son for months, that you orchestrated the entire situation to ingratiate yourself into their family." Sarah's mouth fell open. "That's insane. I'm his waitress. I saved his life when he collapsed." "Or you poisoned him yourself and then played hero," the young detective suggested. "Classic con. Create the problem, provide the solution, establish yourself as indispensable." "That's ridiculous. The doctors said it was kidney disease, not poison." "Kidney disease that mysteriously appeared right when you happened to be there." The older detective leaned forward. "Here's what we know. You're a broke waitress with student debt. Antonio Kim is a wealthy man. You saw an opportunity." "I saw a human being dying." "You saw a payday." The young detective slid photos across the table. Pictures of Sarah at the hospital, outside Antonio's room, talking to doctors. "You stalked him, insinuated yourself into his medical care, convinced him to accept your kidney against his family's wishes." He's an adult who made his own choice. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, kindly check the description below. This story is a series, so don't miss any part. Before we continue, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave a comment in the comment section. He was drugged and vulnerable. His mother has power of attorney, which he legally revoked. Sarah's hands trembled. "This is insane. Call Dr. Rodriguez, call the hospital. They'll confirm everything." "We did call the hospital," the older detective said quietly. "Dr. Rodriguez has been advised by hospital administration not to comment on an ongoing investigation. Something about patient privacy laws." Sarah's blood ran cold. Isabella had gotten to the hospital administration. Of course she had. Money and power opened every door, sealed every mouth. "I want a lawyer." "Lawyers cost money you don't have," the young detective said smugly. "Unless you were planning to extort it from the Kim family." "I want a lawyer," Sarah repeated firmly. "I'm not saying anything else until I have legal representation." The detectives exchanged glances. The older one sighed and stood. "Fine, you'll get your phone call. But I'll tell you this, Isabella Kim is a powerful woman with powerful friends. You picked the wrong family to mess with." They left her alone in the interrogation room. Sarah's incision throbbed with each heartbeat. She felt dizzy, nauseous. The stress was affecting her recovery. She needed rest, pain medication, proper medical care. Instead, she was in a police station being accused of crimes she didn't commit. A uniformed officer entered and uncuffed one of her hands, leaving the other secured to the table. He placed an old phone in front of her. "One call, make it count." Sarah's hands shook as she dialed Monica's number. "Please pick up, please." "Hello." "Monica, it's me. I'm at the police station. Isabella had me arrested." "What? Sarah, what's happening?" "She's claiming I manipulated Antonio, stalked him, maybe even poisoned him." Sarah's voice cracked. "I need help. I need a lawyer. I need." "Slow down. Which station?" "Central, downtown." "I'm coming. Don't say anything to anyone until I get there." "Monica, I can't afford a lawyer. You can't afford a lawyer." "We'll figure it out. Just hold on." The officer took the phone away. Back to holding. They moved Sarah to a cell, a small cage with a metal bench and a toilet that reeked of bleach and urine. 3 other women occupied the space, all looking harder and more street-smart than Sarah had ever been. What are you in for? One asked, a woman with tattoos covering her arms. Saving someone's life, apparently, Sarah said, easing herself onto the bench with a grimace. You hurt. Recent surgery, kidney donation. The tattooed woman whistled low. And they arrested you anyway. That's cold, even for them. Sarah leaned her head against the concrete wall and closed her eyes. This couldn't be happening. She'd done something good, something selfless, and now she was being punished for it. Hours passed. Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain and stress overwhelming her system. She vaguely heard the other women talking, heard cell doors opening and closing, heard her name called once for processing. Then Monica's voice cut through the fog. Sarah, wake up. Sarah opened her eyes. Monica stood outside the cell with a man in an expensive suit, late 50s, salt and pepper hair, carrying a leather briefcase. This is Robert Chen, Monica said quickly. He's a lawyer, a real one. He's going to help you. I can't afford. Pro bono, Robert Chen interrupted. I take certain cases for free when they interest me. Yours interests me very much. His smile was sharp. Any case where Isabella Kim is the complainant automatically interests me. A guard opened the cell. Montgomery, you're up. They moved to a private conference room. Robert Chen set his briefcase on the table and pulled out a legal pad. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. Sarah told him. The restaurant, the collapse, the hospital, the testing, the donation, Isabella's threats, all of it. Robert Chen took notes, his expression unreadable. When Sarah finished, he sat back and steepled his fingers. This is retaliation, he said flatly. Isabella Kim is angry that her son defied her and she's taking it out on you. The charges are nonsense. Manipulation, coercion, they'll never stick. You have hospital records documenting every step of the donation process, psychological evaluations, consent forms. Then why am I still here? Because Isabella Kim owns half the judges in this city and has the other half scared of her. She can keep you locked up for 72 hours without formal charges. After that, she either charges you or releases you. 72 hours, Sarah touched her incision. I need medical care, pain medication, I'm 7 days post-surgery. I'll file for immediate release on medical grounds. But Sarah, you need to understand something. This isn't just about the arrest. Isabella is sending a message. She's showing you what happens when you defy her family. I didn't defy anyone. I saved her son's life. Exactly. You did something she couldn't do. You gave Antonio something she couldn't give him. In her world. That's a power play, a challenge to her authority. Robert Chen leaned forward. Has Antonio tried to contact you? I don't know. They took my phone. He doesn't know you've been arrested. Isabella has him sedated for routine testing. She's isolated him, controlled the information flow. By the time he finds out what happened, she'll have already shaped the narrative. Sarah felt sick. He'll think I abandoned him. Or worse, that you were exactly what his mother said you were, a con artist who disappeared once the heat got turned up. Robert Chen pulled out his phone. I have contacts at the hospital. I'll get word to Antonio's doctors about what's happening. But Sarah, you need to prepare yourself. Even if Antonio learns the truth, he might not be able to help you. Not immediately. Why not? Because he just had major surgery. He's weak. His organization is probably already seeing him as vulnerable. If he shows weakness by publicly defending a waitress against his own mother, the vultures will circle. He might have to choose between saving you and saving his empire. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She'd saved Antonio's life, and now she might lose her own freedom because of it. What do I do? You survive the next 72 hours. You don't talk to police without me present. You don't accept any deals they offer, and you trust that the truth will eventually come out. Robert Chen stood. I'm filing the medical release motion now. In the meantime, try to rest. You look like you're about to collapse. I feel like it. Robert left. A guard escorted Sarah back to the holding cell. The tattooed woman looked up as she entered. You got a fancy lawyer now, moving up in the world. Or sinking deeper, Sarah muttered, lowering herself onto the bench. Night fell. The lights in the cell dimmed but never went fully dark. Sarah couldn't sleep, partly from pain, partly from fear, partly from the noise of the police station that never truly quieted. Around midnight, a guard appeared. "Montgomery, you've got a visitor." Sarah struggled to her feet. "My lawyer." "No, someone else." They led her to a different room, nicer than the interrogation room, with actual chairs instead of metal stools. Sarah's heart leaped. Maybe Antonio had found out. Maybe he'd come to fix this. But the person waiting wasn't Antonio. It was a man Sarah had never seen before. Mid-40s, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Something about him radiated danger in a way that made even the guards seem nervous. "Miss Montgomery," he said smoothly, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit, we have much to discuss." "Who are you?" "My name is Marco Rasso, and I'm here to make you an offer you'd be foolish to refuse." Sarah remained standing despite the pain shooting through her side. Every instinct screamed danger. "I don't know you," she said carefully. "But I know you." Marco Rasso's smile widened. "Sarah Montgomery, 28 years old, orphaned at 19, worked as a waitress at Marcello's, recently donated a kidney to Antonio Kim, much to his mother's displeasure, currently being held on fabricated charges because Isabella Kim doesn't like being shown up." The casual recitation of her life made Sarah's skin crawl. "How do you know all that?" "Antonio told me everything." Marco leaned forward, his expression earnest. "He's frantic, Sarah. When he woke up and found out what his mother did to you, he called me immediately. We've known each other for years, business associates, you could say. He trusts me." Sarah's tension eased slightly. "Antonio sent you." "He's still in the hospital, too weak to come himself. The doctors won't release him yet." Marco pulled out his phone and showed her a text message. Sarah squinted at the screen. It was in Korean, but Antonio's name was clearly at the top of the conversation. "He asked me to get you out of here, to protect you until he's strong enough to handle his mother himself." "Why would Antonio trust you with this?" "Because in our world, you need allies you can depend on. Antonio and I have helped each other before. He knew I had the connections to post your bail quickly, quietly, before Isabella could block it." Marco's voice softened with what seemed like genuine concern. "He's worried about you, Sarah. The stress of being arrested, the lack of proper medical care, you just had major surgery. This could kill you." Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her incision. The pain was constant now, a burning reminder of her vulnerability. "I don't understand. If Antonio sent you, why didn't he just call me?" "Isabella confiscated your phone from the hospital. She's controlling all information flow, making sure Antonio can't reach you directly." Marco stood and walked closer, his movements non-threatening. "Look, I know this seems suspicious. A stranger showing up claiming to be Antonio's friend. But think about it. How else would I know about the kidney donation, the arrest, the specific charges Isabella filed? Antonio told me everything because he needs my help to protect you." It made sense. Sarah's mind raced through the logic. Antonio was still hospitalized, still under Isabella's influence and control. Of course he'd reach out to someone he trusted to help her. "What does Antonio want me to do?" "Come with me. I have a secure location where you can recover properly. Medical care, security, everything you need until Antonio is strong enough to confront his mother and end this nightmare." Marco pulled out the envelope again. "Your bail is already posted. You can walk out of here in the next hour. Antonio's orders." Sarah looked at the envelope, then at Marco's face. He seemed sincere, concerned, and if Antonio really had sent him. "Can I talk to Antonio first, before I go anywhere?" "Of course. Once we're away from this police station, away from Isabella's surveillance, I'll take you to him. He's at a private medical facility now, not the hospital where his mother can control everything." Marco's smile was warm. "He specifically said he won't rest until he sees you're safe." That sounded like Antonio. Sarah felt her resistance crumbling. She was in pain, scared, alone. And here was someone offering help, claiming to be sent by the one person she trusted. "Okay," she said quietly. I'll go with you. Marco's smile widened. Smart decision. Antonio will be relieved. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Yes, post the bail now. We'll be ready for transport in 30 minutes. As Marco talked logistics, Sarah felt a mix of relief and lingering unease. Something felt slightly off, but she couldn't pinpoint what. Maybe it was just paranoia from everything she'd been through. Sarah, I need to be honest with you about something, Marco said after ending his call. Antonio's situation is more complicated than you know. His mother's actions have made him look weak to his rivals. People are circling, waiting for an opportunity to strike at him. What does that have to do with me? Everything. You're the woman who saved his life. You're important to him. That makes you a target. Marco's expression turned grave. Isabella isn't the only one who sees you as a threat. Antonio has enemies, real enemies, who would love to use you against him. Sarah's stomach dropped. Use me how? Kidnapping, leverage, worse. Marco moved closer, his voice dropping. That's why Antonio sent me. He needs you somewhere safe, somewhere his enemies can't reach you. Once he's recovered enough to consolidate his power to show strength, then you can be together publicly. But right now, you being visible makes you a liability. A liability, Sarah repeated, the word tasting bitter. Not to Antonio, never to him, but to his position, his empire. Marco's hand touched her shoulder gently. He cares about you deeply, Sarah. That's obvious from how frantic he was when he called me, but caring about you means protecting you from the darkness of his world. That's what I'm here to do. It made horrible sense. Sarah had saved Antonio's life, but she'd also painted a target on her back by associating with him. In his world, compassion was weakness. Love was vulnerability. Where would I go? I have an estate outside the city, secure, private, medical staff on site to monitor your recovery. Marco pulled up photos on his phone, a beautiful property with gardens and modern architecture. You'll be comfortable, safe, and as soon as Antonio is strong enough, he'll come to you, I promise. Sarah studied the photos. It looked peaceful, secure, everything the police station wasn't, everything she desperately needed right now. But something nagged at her, a small voice in the back of her mind whispering warnings she didn't want to hear. If Antonio sent you, why didn't he mention you before? In the hospital, we talked about his life, his world. He never mentioned a Marco Rasso. Marco's expression didn't change, but Sarah caught the briefest flicker of something in his eyes. Calculation, maybe. Antonio keeps his business relationships separate from his personal life. It's how he survives. You're personal, Sarah. The most personal thing in his life right now. He wouldn't burden you with names and details of his business associates. Marco's voice remained smooth, reasonable. But when crisis strikes, he calls the people he trusts. I'm one of those people. Sarah wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. Because the alternative was staying in this cell, waiting for Isabella to destroy her slowly, painfully. The throbbing in her incision intensified as if to remind her how fragile she was right now. I need to think, Sarah said, pressing her hand against her side. You don't have time to think. Marco's voice sharpened slightly, then softened again. Sarah, look at me, really look at me. Do I seem like someone who wants to hurt you? I'm here offering help, offering protection, offering everything you need to survive this. Antonio sent me because he knew you'd be scared, confused, unsure who to trust. Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. She was scared, terrified, actually. Her body hurt. Her mind was foggy from stress and lack of sleep. She'd given up a vital organ for a man whose mother had her thrown in jail like trash. How do I know you're really from Antonio? Her voice cracked again, her instincts telling him this man is lying. Marco pulled out his phone again, scrolling through messages. Here, these are our texts from earlier today. You can't read Korean, but look at the timestamps. Look at the frequency. We've been coordinating your release for hours. Marco knew how to play the game, even though he knew he was lying, but he had money and power, so who could detect it? He had all the evidence that revealed Antonio sent him. Sarah stared at the screen. The messages were real, she could see that much. Time stamps from throughout the day. Back and forth communication. It looked legitimate. But that voice in her head wouldn't quiet completely. Something felt wrong, something she couldn't identify. "What if this is a trick?" she whispered. "A trick for what purpose?" Marco's patience seemed genuine, understanding even. "Sarah, if I wanted to hurt you, I could have done it already. You're in a police station, vulnerable, injured, alone. If my intentions were bad, why would I post bail? Why have this conversation? I could have just waited for you to be transferred to county jail where you'd be even more accessible." He knew her weakness and was now using it against her. The logic was sound. Too sound, maybe, but Sarah's exhausted mind couldn't find the flaw. She thought about dying in this cell, about Isabella's face, cold and cruel, about the police officers who'd grabbed her too roughly, who'd ignored her pleas for pain medication, about the tattooed woman in the holding cell who'd said, even for them, that's cold. She thought about Monica, who couldn't afford a real legal defense, about Robert Chen, who was good but fighting a rigged system, about being alone, truly alone, with no family to protect her and no resources to save herself. And she thought about Antonio, kind, gentle Antonio who'd treated her like a human being when no one else did, who'd held her hand before surgery, who'd promised she was family now. If he really had sent Marco, and she refused help out of paranoia, she might die here. Isabella would make sure of it. "Okay," Sarah heard herself say, "I'll come with you." The relief on Marco's face looked genuine. "Thank you. Antonio will be so relieved. Let me make the arrangements." As Marco stepped out to coordinate with the guards, Sarah slumped against the wall, tears streaming down her face. She'd just made a choice, maybe the right one, maybe a terrible mistake. But what else could she do? Stay here and let Isabella destroy her? No asterisk, she thought firmly. Antonio sent help. He wouldn't abandon me after everything. But even as she thought it, doubt gnawed at her. She pushed it down, buried it beneath desperation and pain and the crushing need to survive. Marco returned 15 minutes later with a guard. "You're all set. Bail posted, paperwork processed. You're free to go." Sarah stood slowly, wincing. Every movement sent fire through her incision. She followed Marco through the corridors, past the booking desk, through the heavy doors that separated prisoners from the free world. The night air hit her face, cool and clean. She breathed it in deeply, savoring freedom even as fear twisted in her gut. A sleek black Mercedes waited at the curb. Not an SUV like Antonio's, something different. More expensive, maybe. A driver stood by the rear door, his face expressionless. "This way," Marco said, his hand gently guiding her elbow. Sarah hesitated. This was it. Once she got in that car, there was no going back. She looked around desperately, hoping to see Robert Chen, Monica, anyone who could confirm this was okay. The street was empty except for them. "Sarah," Marco's voice held a note of concern. "Are you all right? Do you need a moment?" She turned to face him. "I just need you to promise me something. Promise me Antonio really sent you. Promise me I'm not making a mistake." Marco's expression softened. He took both her hands gently, carefully, like someone handling something precious and fragile. "I promise you, Sarah, Antonio is waiting for you. Everything I've told you is true. You're going to be safe." Sarah searched his eyes. She wanted so badly to see truth there, needed to see it. And maybe she did. Or maybe she just convinced herself she did because the alternative was too terrifying. "Okay," she whispered. She got into the car. Marco Russo watched Sarah settle into the leather seat, her face pale with pain and exhaustion. The door closed with a solid, final sound. He walked around to the other side and slid in beside her. Too easy, he thought, keeping his expression neutral. Far too easy. He'd expected more resistance, more questions, more of that spark he'd seen in her eyes when she'd first refused to betray Antonio. But pain and fear were powerful motivators. They made people desperate, clouded judgment, turned the cautious into the careless. Sarah Montgomery had been perfect, a pure heart in a corrupt world, someone who'd sacrificed everything for a man she barely knew. And that purity, that naivety, was exactly what made her so valuable, and so easy to manipulate. Marco had spent years learning to read people. It was how he'd survived in a world where one misstep meant death. He knew when someone was calculating, when they were playing angles, when they were lying. Sarah wasn't any of those things. She was exactly what she appeared to be, a good person in an impossible situation, desperate for someone to save her. And he'd offered salvation, wrapped in Antonio's name. The beauty of the lie was its simplicity. He hadn't needed elaborate forgeries or complex schemes. Just a few texts in Korean that Sarah couldn't read, a believable story about Antonio's concern, and the basic human need to believe that someone cared. She'd wanted to believe. That's what made it work. Marco glanced at Sarah as the car pulled away from the police station. She was staring out the window, tears silently streaming down her face. One hand pressed against her incision, the other clutched the door handle like an anchor. She was still suspicious. He could see it in the tension of her shoulders, the way her jaw clenched. But suspicion without conviction was worthless. She'd killed her doubts because the alternative, dying alone in a cell, was worse than the risk of trusting him. Perfect. You're doing the right thing, Marco said softly, playing his role to perfection. Antonio will be so relieved. Sarah nodded but didn't speak, didn't look at him. Still fighting it, Marco noted. Still listening to that little voice of doubt, but not listening hard enough. Where exactly are we going? Sarah asked suddenly, her voice stronger than before. You said outside the city, how far? Marco smiled reassuringly. About 40 minutes north. The estate is in Greenwood Hills, very private, very secure. He pulled up a map on his phone. See, we'll take the highway, then country roads. Peaceful area, good for recovery. Sarah studied the map. Marco watched her eyes trace the route, saw the doubt flickering again. That's pretty far from the hospital where Antonio is, she observed quietly. Smart girl, Marco thought. Not as naive as I hoped, but still manageable. Antonio's not at the regular hospital anymore, Marco said smoothly. After he found out what his mother did, he had himself transferred to a private medical facility. Didn't want Isabella controlling his care. The facility is actually near my estate. That's why he asked me to bring you there. You'll be close to him. It was a good lie, plausible, logical, and completely unverifiable in her current state. Sarah nodded slowly, but her hand tightened on the door handle. Can we stop somewhere? I need pain medication, and maybe something to eat. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Of course, there's a pharmacy and a diner about 15 minutes ahead. We'll stop there. Marco leaned forward and told the driver, take the exit to Riverside. We'll make a stop. Sarah relaxed slightly. The offer to stop in a public place seemed to ease her suspicions. Let her think she has control, Marco thought. Let her think she can walk away at any time. It makes the cage invisible until it's too late. The car merged onto the highway. City lights began to thin, replaced by the darkness of the outskirts. Sarah watched the transition with growing unease. Marco, she said quietly, can I use your phone? I want to text my friend Monica, let her know I'm okay. There it is, Marco thought, the test, seeing if I'll refuse. Of course. He handed her his phone without hesitation. Password is 4729. Sarah took it, clearly surprised he'd given it so easily. Her fingers trembled as she opened the messaging app. Marco watched her type. Monica, it's Sarah, I'm out. Antonio sent someone to help me, I'm safe. I'll call you tomorrow. She hit send, then handed the phone back. Thank you. No problem. Marco pocketed the phone. The message would never reach Monica. He'd have it deleted from his phone records within the hour, and his tech people would make sure it never went through properly. But Sarah didn't know that. She thought she'd established a lifeline. Amateur, Marco thought affectionately. She has no idea how this world actually works. Sarah leaned her head against the window, exhaustion finally overwhelming suspicion. Her eyes began to close. Rest, Marco said gently. We'll be at the pharmacy soon and then the estate. You're safe now, Sarah. Everything's going to be fine. Sarah's eyes fluttered closed. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into something close to sleep. Marco pulled out his own phone and sent a text to his head of security. Package acquired. No complications. ETA 45 minutes. Prepare the north wing. Medical staff on standby. No contact with outside world until further notice. The response came immediately. Understood, sir. Will Antonio Kim be a problem? Marco smiled coldly as he typed his response. Antonio doesn't even know she's missing yet. By the time he finds out, she'll be too valuable to risk retrieving by force. Everything is proceeding exactly as planned. He looked at Sarah's sleeping face, innocent even in exhaustion, trusting even in fear. She'd given up a kidney to save a man she barely knew. That kind of selflessness was rare, precious, and absolutely exploitable. Antonio Kim had been Marco's rival for 5 years. They'd fought over territory, over influence, over the countless invisible lines that divided the criminal underworld. But they'd maintained a careful balance, neither strong enough to destroy the other without massive cost. Until Antonio had gotten sick. The kidney disease had been a gift from the universe. Antonio, weak, vulnerable, dependent on medical care. His organization questioning his strength. His mother scrambling to maintain power through a doomed marriage arrangement. Marco had been preparing to strike when Sarah Montgomery had done something impossible. She'd saved Antonio's life. At first, Marco had been furious. His carefully laid plans ruined by a waitress with a hero complex. But then he'd seen the opportunity. Antonio owed Sarah everything. His life, his future, his empire. And Antonio, for all his ruthlessness in business, had one fatal flaw: he valued loyalty above all else. He'd never betray someone who'd sacrificed so much for him. Which meant Sarah was leverage. Perfect, unassailable leverage. If Marco controlled Sarah, he controlled Antonio's weakness. He could force cooperation, demand concessions, reshape the entire power structure of the city, all without firing a shot. And the beauty of it was that Sarah had come willingly. No kidnapping, no violence, just a desperate woman accepting help from the wrong person. The car took the exit toward Riverside. Streetlights illuminated Sarah's face periodically, showing the tracks of dried tears on her cheeks. She looked younger in sleep, more fragile, like someone who didn't belong in this world of violence and betrayal. She doesn't belong here, Marco thought, but she inserted herself anyway, and now she'll pay the price for compassion. The pharmacy came into view, a 24-hour chain attached to a small shopping center. The diner next door still had its lights on despite the late hour. "Sarah," Marco said gently, "we're here, wake up." Sarah's eyes opened slowly, confused for a moment before memory returned. She sat up quickly, wincing at the movement. "The pharmacy. And the diner. Let's get your medication and some food." They went inside. The pharmacist looked tired but helpful, filling Sarah's prescription for pain medication and antibiotics without question. Marco paid in cash, playing the role of concerned friend perfectly. In the diner, Sarah ordered soup and toast, easy on her recovering system. Marco got coffee he didn't want, maintaining the illusion of normalcy. Sarah swallowed 2 pain pills with water, then started on her soup. After a few bites, she looked at Marco seriously. "I need to see Antonio tomorrow, first thing, before anything else." "Of course, you have my word," Marco said smoothly. "Once you've rested tonight, I'll take you to him myself in the morning." Sarah studied his face, searching for deception. "Promise." "I promise." The lie came easily. He'd made thousands of promises in his life. Breaking them had never cost him sleep. Sarah seemed to relax slightly, taking another spoonful of soup. The medication was already working. Marco could see it in the way her shoulders loosened, her eyelids grew heavier. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping me, for getting me out of there. I was so scared." The gratitude in her voice made something twist in Marco's chest. Not guilt. He'd killed that emotion years ago, but something close to it. Recognition, maybe, that he was destroying something rare and good. Necessary, he reminded himself. In this world, goodness is a luxury only the powerful can afford, and she chose to play in a game she doesn't understand. "You don't have to thank me," Marco said. Antonio would do the same for me. We protect our own. Sarah smiled weakly. I'm not really one of your own, though, am I? I'm just a waitress who happened to be there when Antonio needed help. You're more than that now. You saved his life. That makes you family in our world. Marco leaned forward, his voice sincere. And family protects each other no matter what. Keep believing that, he thought. Keep believing you're safe. It makes everything so much easier. Sarah finished her soup slowly, each bite requiring visible effort. The exhaustion was catching up with her, the surgery, the arrest, the stress. Her body was demanding rest whether her mind trusted the situation or not. I think I need to lie down soon, she admitted. Everything hurts. The estate is only 20 more minutes. You can sleep in the car if you'd like. They returned to the Merceds. Sarah settled into the backseat, the pain medication creating a pleasant fog in her mind. The doubts that had been screaming earlier were quieter now, muffled by drugs and desperation. As the car pulled back onto the highway, Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She'd forgotten she had it. The police had returned it when she was released. She pulled it out. 3 missed calls from Monica, 2 from Robert Chen, 7 text messages. Monica, Sarah, where are you? Robert said you were released, but you're not answering. Monica, call Emmy now. Robert Chen, Sarah, do not go anywhere with Marco Russo. He's dangerous. Call me immediately. Sarah's blood ran cold. Her fingers trembled as she read the next message. Robert Chen, I spoke to the hospital. Antonio is still sedated. He couldn't have sent anyone. Marco Russo is Antonio's enemy. If you're with him, you're in danger. The phone nearly slipped from her hands. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she looked up at Marco, who was scrolling through his own phone, completely relaxed. He'd lied about everything. Antonio hadn't sent him. They weren't going to see Antonio tomorrow. This wasn't a rescue, it was a kidnapping. And she'd walked right into it. Sarah's mind raced. She was in a moving car on a highway, injured and weak, with a man who just revealed himself to be Antonio's enemy. The driver was undoubtedly Marco's employee. She had no weapon, no advantage, no way to escape. Stay calm, she told herself. Don't let him know you figured it out. Wait for an opportunity. She forced her breathing to remain steady, forced her expression to stay neutral. She turned the phone face down in her lap as if she'd just checked the time, not read messages that revealed the truth. Everything okay? Marco asked, glancing over at her. Fine, just checking the time. Sarah's voice sounded surprisingly normal to her own ears. My phone was dead earlier, just seeing what I missed. Anything important? Just Monica worrying. I'll call her tomorrow when we see Antonio. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. Marco smiled. Good idea. Let her know you're safe. No need to worry your friends. Sarah nodded and slipped the phone back into her pocket. Her mind was racing, calculating possibilities. They were on a highway. If she jumped from the car, she'd probably die, especially in her weakened state. If she tried to fight, Marco would overpower her easily. Her only option was to wait, hope for an opportunity. Hope that someone, Robert, Monica, even Antonio, would realize she was missing and come looking. But where would they even look? The thought sent ice through her veins. Marco covered his tracks. The texts that looked like they were from Antonio. The bail posted anonymously. No one knows where I am. Except Marco had let her send that text to Monica from his phone. Could that be traced? Would it matter? Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to her incision. The pain was a constant reminder of her vulnerability. She'd given up a kidney to save Antonio, and now she was being used as a weapon against him by his enemy. The irony was devastating. You're quiet, Marco observed. Feeling okay, not too much pain. Just tired, Sarah said. The medication is making me drowsy. Rest then, we'll be there soon. Sarah closed her eyes, but sleep was impossible now. Behind her eyelids, her mind worked frantically. She thought about everything Marco had said, looking for clues she'd missed, warnings she'd ignored. Antonio and I have helped each other before. A lie. He's frantic about you. A lie. You're going to be safe. The biggest lie of all. How could she have been so stupid? So desperate to believe that someone cared, that Antonio had sent help, that she wasn't completely alone. Because you're dying, a voice in her head answered. Because Isabella was going to kill you slowly in that cell. Because you had no other choice. But she'd had a choice. She could have waited for Robert, could have insisted on talking to Antonio directly, could have trusted her instincts instead of silencing them with fear and pain. Now it was too late. The car slowed, taking an exit Sarah didn't recognize. Trees lined both sides of the road now, thick and dark. No streetlights, no other cars, just darkness and the sound of tires on asphalt. Almost there, Marco said cheerfully. Sarah opened her eyes and looked out the window. Nothing but forest. No houses, no lights, no witnesses. This is it, she thought. This is where I disappear, where no one will find me. Her phone was still in her pocket. Could she call for help without Marco noticing? Probably not. Could she share her location? Maybe, but what good would it do if rescue came too late? The car turned onto a private road, marked only by a small stone pillar. They drove for another 5 minutes through dense woods before a mansion appeared in the distance. It was beautiful, all modern architecture and glass walls, lit from within like a jewel in the darkness. Nothing about it looked threatening. It looked like a luxury resort. But Sarah knew better now. A beautiful cage was still a cage. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. Marco's driver got out and opened Sarah's door. She had no choice but to step out, her legs unsteady beneath her. Marco came around the car and offered his arm. Careful, you're still recovering. Sarah wanted to spit in his face, wanted to scream, to fight, to run. But she was one woman, injured and weak, against trained security in the middle of nowhere. So she took his arm and let him guide her toward the entrance. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman in medical scrubs stood there, smiling professionally. Welcome, Miss Montgomery. I'm Dr. Helen Park. I'll be monitoring your recovery while you're here. While you're here, not while you're staying, not as our guest, just while you're here like it was temporary, like Sarah had a choice about leaving. Thank you, Sarah said automatically, her voice hollow. They entered a massive foyer with soaring ceilings and expensive art on the walls. Everything was pristine. Perfect, designed to impress. Your suite is upstairs, Marco said. Dr. Park will check your incision, make sure you're healing properly. Get some rest tonight. We'll talk more in the morning about everything. The way he said everything made Sarah's skin crawl. Dr. Park led Sarah up a curved staircase to the second floor. They walked down a hallway lined with closed doors before stopping at one near the end. This is your room, Dr. Park said, opening the door. The suite was enormous, bigger than Sarah's entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated one wall. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the forest. There was a sitting area, a desk, even a small kitchenette. And bars. Decorative, expensive-looking, but bars nonetheless, hidden behind the elegant curtains on the windows. Let me check your incision, Dr. Park said, gesturing toward the bed. Sarah sat mechanically, lifted her shirt. Dr. Park's examination was professional, gentle. Healing well, no signs of infection. You're lucky, the surgery went perfectly. Lucky, Sarah repeated dully. Dr. Park pulled out a pill bottle. These are your pain medications. Take 2 every 6 hours as needed. I'll check on you in the morning. She paused at the door. There's a call button by the bed if you need anything during the night. Someone will always respond. Someone will always be watching. Sarah understood. Dr. Park left, closing the door behind her. Sarah heard the soft click of a lock engaging. She was alone now, truly alone. Sarah walked to the windows and pulled back the curtains. The bars were there, subtle but unmistakable. She tried the window anyway. Locked. She tried every window in the suite, all locked. The door to the hallway, locked from the outside. She was in a beautiful prison. Sarah sank onto the bed, her body shaking with silent sobs. She'd been so stupid. So desperate, so convinced that someone would save her that she'd walked right into a trap. Her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out with trembling hands. Monica, please tell me you didn't go with Marco Russo. Robert Chen, Sarah, answer your phone. We're trying to locate you. Antonio is awake now. He's furious. He never sent Marco. Please, if you get this, tell us where you are. Antonio, Sarah's heart clenched. He was awake, looking for her, and she had no idea how to reach him. She tried to send a response, but the message wouldn't go through. No signal. Of course. Marco would have made sure of that. Sarah noticed something else. Her location services had been disabled. When? She'd had service in the diner. Had Marco's people accessed her phone while she was eating? Or had the medication made her too fuzzy to notice him taking it? She was completely cut off. Sarah lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd saved Antonio's life, and now she was a prisoner because of it, used as a weapon against the man she'd sacrificed everything to save. The cruelty of it was almost poetic. Downstairs, Marco stood in his office, looking at the security feed showing Sarah's room. She was lying on the bed, phone in hand, clearly trying to reach someone. Let her try, he thought. Let her realize how completely trapped she is. Despair makes people more manageable. His phone buzzed. A text from his head of security. Antonio Kim's people are mobilizing. They know she's missing. They're checking hospitals, police stations, Robert Chen's office. No indication they suspect our involvement yet. Marco smiled. He'd been careful. The bail had been posted through 3 shell companies. The Merceds had fake plates. Dr. Park was paid well enough to keep her mouth shut. Even the texts Sarah had sent to Monica had been routed through servers that would take days to trace, if they could be traced at all. By the time Antonio figured out where Sarah was, Marco would have already used her to secure everything he needed. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. I know what you did. I know you have her. This is a mistake you won't survive. Antonio, finally. Marco typed back. She came willingly, asked me to help her. Quite trusting, your little savior. We're taking excellent care of her. Better than your mother did, certainly. The response was immediate. If you hurt her, I will burn your entire world to the ground. No need for threats, old friend, Marco replied. Sarah is perfectly safe, comfortable even. She's recovering from surgery, your surgery, in a beautiful suite with medical care. I'm protecting her from your mother's revenge. You should be thanking me. Name your price. Marco's smile widened. There it was, the desperation, the weakness. Antonio would give anything to get Sarah back safely, and they both knew it. Tomorrow, Marco typed. We'll discuss terms tomorrow. Tonight, let her rest. She's been through so much, hasn't she? Surgery, arrest, trauma. She needs peace. I'm giving her that. Something you and your mother failed to provide. He waited, but Antonio didn't respond. Good. Let him stew in helplessness for a night. Let him understand that Marco held all the cards now. Marco pulled up the security feed again. Sarah had gotten up and was packing the room, testing the windows, the door, looking for any way out. Keep looking, Marco thought. There isn't one. This suite is designed for exactly this purpose, keeping valuable assets secure until they're needed. He'd used it before, business rivals, witnesses, people who knew too much or had something he wanted. The room had held them all, and none had ever escaped. Sarah Montgomery wouldn't be the first. His phone rang. Vincent Zhao, one of his lieutenants. Talk to me, Marco answered. Antonio's tearing the city apart looking for her. He's called in every favor, activated every contact. Half the police force is searching. The other half is being paid to not search. Good, Marco said. Let him search. He won't find her, not until I'm ready. Boss, you sure about this? Antonio Kim isn't someone you want as an enemy, not permanently. He's already my enemy, has been for years. I'm just evening the playing field. Marco ended the call and poured himself a scotch, settling into his leather chair. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Antonio's hospital room, St. Mary's Private Medical Center. Antonio Kim stared at his phone, rage burning through every nerve in his body. His hands shook partly from fury, partly from weakness. 7 days post-transplant, and his body was still recovering, still fragile, still betraying him when he needed strength most. She came willingly. Marco's words echoed in his mind like poison. Sarah had gone with his enemy, walked right into Marco Russo's trap while Antonio lay helpless in a hospital bed, sedated and controlled by his own mother. His fingers moved across the screen, typing another message. I swear on everything I have, Marco, if you harm her. There won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in. No response. Antonio threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. The sudden movement sent pain lancing through his surgical site, and he gasped, pressing his hand against the bandages. Damn it, his voice cracked with frustration. He tried to sit up to get out of bed, but his body refused to cooperate. Weakness flooded through him. The room spun. He fell back against the pillows, breathing hard, sweat beading on his forehead. 7 days. Dr. Rodriguez had been clear. 7 more days of monitored recovery before he could even think about leaving the hospital. His new kidney was functioning perfectly, but his body needed time to adjust, to heal, to regain strength. 7 days he didn't have. Sarah was out there, trapped by Marco Russo, probably terrified, definitely in danger. And Antonio was stuck in this bed, as helpless as a child. This is my fault, asterisk, he thought, staring at the ceiling. All of it is my fault. He should have told Sarah about Marco. Should have warned her about all his enemies the moment he woke up from surgery. Should have protected her from his mother's wrath instead of being unconscious, while Isabella had Sarah arrested. But he'd been weak, sick, vulnerable, and Sarah had paid the price for his weakness. Antonio's jaw clenched. He thought about the last time he'd seen her, in that hospital corridor before surgery, her hand reaching across the gap between their beds, her eyes full of compassion and fear and determination. Thank you, he'd said. Whatever happens, thank you. She'd saved his life, given him her kidney without asking for anything in return, and now she was a prisoner because of it. The irony was devastating. The woman who'd shown him the most selfless act of kindness in his entire life was suffering because she dared to care about him. I have to get to her, Antonio thought desperately. I have to save her. But how? He couldn't even stand without collapsing. His organization was mobilizing. He'd made the calls, given the orders, but Marco was smart. He'd hidden Sarah somewhere secure, somewhere Antonio's people hadn't found yet. And meanwhile, every hour that passed was another hour Sarah spent in Marco's control. Another hour she might think Antonio had abandoned her. Another hour she might lose hope. Antonio picked up his phone from where it had fallen, ignoring the cracked screen. He typed out another message to Marco. What do you want? Territory? Money? Partnerships? Name it, just let her go. This time Marco responded immediately. I want what you have. Power. Respect. The entire Eastern District. And I want you to hand it over voluntarily, publicly, showing everyone that Antonio Kim bows to Marco Russo. Antonio's vision went red. Marco wanted him to surrender everything he'd built, to humiliate himself, to show weakness to every rival and enemy who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. And if I refuse? Then Sarah pays the price. I won't kill her, that would be wasteful, but I'll make sure she suffers enough that you'll wish I had. And you'll know every day that her pain is your fault, because you chose pride over her safety. Antonio's hands shook so violently he nearly dropped the phone. The message was clear. Surrender or watch Sarah be destroyed. He wanted to throw the phone again, wanted to scream, wanted to tear the IV from his arm and storm out of this hospital to find Marco and rip him apart with his bare hands. But he couldn't. He was too weak, too vulnerable, too trapped in his own failing body. I need time, Antonio typed, to think, to arrange things. You have 24 hours, Marco replied. Then I start making her uncomfortable. 48 hours, I start making her scared. 72 hours, I start making her scream. Choose wisely, Antonio. The phone slipped from Antonio's fingers. 24 hours. One day to decide between his empire and Sarah's safety. There was no real choice. He knew that. Sarah had given him life without hesitation. He'd give her anything, everything to keep her safe. But surrendering to Marco meant more than losing territory. It meant showing every enemy in the city that Antonio Kim could be broken. It meant rebellion from his own people. It meant war. And it meant his mother had been right all along. Caring about someone made you weak, made you vulnerable, made you a target. No asterisk, Antonio thought fiercely. Mother was wrong. Caring about Sarah doesn't make me weak, it makes me human, and I won't apologize for that. But being human didn't save Sarah. Being human didn't give him the strength to get out of this bed and rescue her. The door to his room opened softly. Antonio tensed, expecting a nurse, maybe Dr. Rodriguez with more warnings about rest and recovery. Instead, Isabella Kim walked in. Antonio's entire body went rigid. He stared at his mother, seeing her clearly for maybe the first time in his life. The woman who'd raised him, trained him, built an empire and handed him the keys. The woman who'd had Sarah arrested and beaten while Antonio lay unconscious. Dr. Rodriguez had told him everything when he'd finally woken up fully. Every detail of Sarah's arrest. The charges, the night in jail, the fact that his mother had orchestrated all of it to punish Sarah for manipulating him. And Antonio had said nothing, made no calls, sent no messages to his mother, because he didn't trust himself not to say something he couldn't take back. Now here she was, walking into his room like nothing had happened, her expression carefully neutral. "Antonio," Isabella said softly, "how are you feeling?" "Fine." His voice was flat, emotionless. He kept his eyes on the ceiling, refusing to look at her. "The doctors say your recovery is progressing well. The kidney is functioning perfectly." "Yes." Isabella moved closer to the bed. "I spoke with Dr. Rodriguez. She says you should be able to leave in a week if there are no complications." "A week?" Antonio's hands clenched into fists beneath the blanket. "A week while Sarah suffers. A week while Marco breaks her." "I've been making arrangements," Isabella continued. "Security for when you come home. Meetings with our partners to show you're strong, healthy. We need to project strength right now, Antonio. Your illness made us look vulnerable." "We," Antonio thought bitterly. "There is no we, Mother. There's you using me as a chess piece in your games." But he said nothing, just kept staring at the ceiling, his jaw tight. Isabella sat in the chair beside his bed. "I know you're angry with me, about the waitress." Antonio's eyes snapped to her face. "Her name is Sarah." "About Sarah," Isabella corrected, though her tone suggested the name meant nothing to her. "I did what I thought was necessary to protect you." By having her arrested, Antonio's voice was dangerously quiet. By having her thrown in jail while she was still recovering from surgery, from donating her kidney to save my life. She was manipulating you. "She saved me," Antonio's control shattered. His voice rose, harsh and furious. "While everyone else ran, she stayed. While you were making deals with Thomas Chen, she was calling 911. While you were counting money, she was giving up a part of her body to keep me alive." Isabella's face remained impassive. "And now you feel obligated to her, indebted. That makes you weak, Antonio. It gives your enemies leverage." "My enemies already have leverage." Antonio's laugh was bitter. "Because of you, because you had her arrested, Marco Russo was able to swoop in and rescue her. Now he has her, and he's using her to force me to surrender everything I've built." Isabella's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her composure. "Marco has her. He posted her bail, told her I sent him. She was desperate, scared, in pain. She believed him." Antonio's voice broke. "She trusted him because she thought I cared enough to send help, and now she's his prisoner because I was too weak to protect her from you." The silence in the room was suffocating. Isabella's face had gone pale. "When did this happen?" "Last night. While you were sleeping peacefully in your mansion, Sarah was being driven to Marco's estate. Trapped, alone, terrified." Antonio turned his head to look directly at his mother. This is your fault. You created this situation. You made her vulnerable. You handed my enemy the perfect weapon against me. I was trying to protect you from a gold digger. She never asked for anything. Antonio's shout echoed off the walls. Not money, not protection, not even gratitude. She gave me her kidney and expected nothing in return. But you couldn't accept that someone might actually care about me without an agenda. Because in your world, Mother, caring about people is weakness. Love is liability. Compassion is foolishness. Isabella stood abruptly. In my world, those things will get you killed. Then maybe your world is wrong. Antonio's voice dropped to a whisper. Maybe building an empire on cruelty and fear isn't strength. Maybe it's just emptiness. Isabella's expression hardened. Isabella's expression hardened. You're being emotional, weak. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Shut up. Antonio's voice was ice. Just shut up, Mother. I'm done listening to your justifications. Excuse me. Isabella's eyes flashed dangerously. You don't speak to me that way. I'll speak to you however I want. Antonio tried to sit up again, trembling with rage and weakness. You had an innocent woman arrested and beaten. You destroyed someone who saved my life. And now you stand there acting like you did the right thing. I did do the right thing. Isabella's voice rose to match his, her carefully controlled composure finally cracking. That girl was a liability from the moment she touched you. I did what was necessary to protect this family, to protect you, even though you're too blind to see it. Protect me. You handed Marco Russo the perfect weapon against me. Then let him use her. Isabella's voice was cold, brutal. Let Marco do whatever he wants with her. So what? She's a stranger, Antonio, a nobody. A poor black waitress with no family, no connections, no importance whatsoever. She means nothing in the grand scheme of our world. The words hit Antonio like physical blows. He stared at his mother, seeing a stranger, a monster wearing his mother's face. She saved my life, he whispered. And you repaid her by giving her a fortune in medical care. Isabella waved her hand dismissively. The debt is settled. You owe her nothing more. If Marco wants to use her, kill her, torture her, that's not our problem. That's not your problem. How can you say that? Antonio's voice cracked. How can you be so heartless? Heartless? Isabella laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I'm realistic, Antonio. I'm practical. In our world, you don't survive by caring about every stray that wanders into your life. You survive by making hard choices, by cutting off dead weight before it drags you down. Sarah isn't dead weight. She's a waitress. Isabella's voice dripped with contempt. A nobody who got lucky enough to be present when you collapsed. She called 911, so what? Anyone with a phone could have done that. She donated a kidney. Fine, she made her choice. But that doesn't make her family. That doesn't make her worth destroying everything we've built. Antonio felt something inside him break. Not his body. His body was already broken. Something deeper. Some fundamental belief that underneath all her ruthlessness, his mother still had a heart, still cared about something other than power. You really don't care, he said softly. About her, about what happens to her. No, I don't. Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact, nonchalant, like they were discussing the weather. And neither should you. Marco can do whatever he wants with her. The worst he'll do is kill her. So what? People die every day, Antonio, especially people who insert themselves into worlds they don't belong in. She didn't insert herself. I collapsed in front of her. And she should have minded her own business. Isabella's eyes were cold as winter. But she didn't. She played hero. And now she's paying the price for that stupidity. That's not our fault. That's natural selection. Antonio's hands trembled violently. He wanted to scream, to rage, to somehow make his mother understand the enormity of what she was saying. But he could see in her eyes that she already understood. She just didn't care. You're going to let her die, Antonio said, his voice hollow. I'm going to do nothing, which is exactly what you should do. Isabella leaned over the bed, her face close to his. Listen to me carefully, Antonio. You will not mobilize our organization to rescue some waitress. You will not waste resources, manpower, or political capital on a nobody. You will not show weakness by caring about her publicly. She's not a nobody. She is a nobody. Isabella's voice was venomous. She has no family, no connections, no power. No one important will care if she disappears. No one will investigate if she dies. She's invisible, Antonio, worthless in every way that matters in our world. She matters to me. Antonio's voice was barely a whisper. Then you're a fool. Isabella straightened up, smoothing her designer suit. And I didn't raise a fool, I raised a leader, a king, someone strong enough to make the hard choices. The hard choice? Antonio's laugh was broken. You mean abandoning someone who saved my life, letting my enemy torture and kill her while I do nothing? Yes, exactly that. Isabella's voice was cold, final. Because that's what survival looks like, Antonio. That's what strength looks like. You cut off the dead weight and you move forward. Antonio stared at his mother, really seeing her for the first time in his life. She wasn't protecting him. She was protecting her empire. Her power, her carefully constructed world, where human life only mattered if it had value she could quantify. Sarah had no value in that world. So in Isabella's eyes, Sarah didn't matter. I'm going to save her, Antonio said quietly. No, you're not. Isabella's smile was cruel. You're going to stay in this bed and recover. You're going to forget about the waitress. And you're going to focus on rebuilding your strength and your reputation. You can't stop me. I can, and I will. Isabella moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at him. If you try to mobilize our people to rescue her, I'll shut it down. I control half the organization, Antonio. The older members, the ones who have been with me since the beginning. They listen to me, not you. They'll listen to me. Will they? Isabella's eyebrow arched. You're weak right now, fresh from surgery, emotionally compromised over some girl. They see that weakness. They question your judgment. If I tell them you're not thinking clearly, that you're being manipulated by sentiment, they'll believe me. Antonio's blood ran cold. She was right. His illness had already made him look vulnerable. Rushing to rescue Sarah would confirm every doubt his people had about his strength. You wouldn't, he said, though he knew she would. I would do whatever is necessary to protect what I've built, what we've built. Isabella's voice was steel. That girl is not worth destroying everything for, Antonio, and if you can't see that, then you're not fit to lead. The threat hung in the air between them. So that's it, Antonio's voice shook. Let her die, pretend she never existed. Exactly, move on, forget her. Isabella opened the door. Marco will probably kill her within the week anyway. Once he realizes you're not going to trade your empire for her, she becomes worthless to him. He'll dispose of her and move on to his next play. Mother, Antonio's voice cracked. This conversation is over. Isabella paused in the doorway, her back to him. And Antonio, remember something, you're not actually my biological son. The words froze Antonio's blood. What? Isabella turned slowly, her expression unreadable. I adopted you when you were 5, took you in when your real parents died, raised you, trained you, made you into what you are today. Antonio couldn't breathe. He'd always known he was adopted, that wasn't news. But the way she said it, the coldness in her voice, the implication. Which means, Isabella continued, her voice soft and dangerous, that blood means nothing to me. You're my son because I chose to make you my son, but I can unchoose just as easily. You're threatening me. Antonio's voice was hollow. I'm reminding you of reality. Isabella's smile was terrible. If you try anything foolish, if you defy me, if you waste our resources on that waitress, if you show weakness that threatens everything I've built, then you become a liability. And I deal with liabilities the same way I deal with everything else that threatens my empire. You'd kill me, Antonio could barely form the words. Your own son. I'd make you disappear, Isabella corrected. Quietly, efficiently, and I'd tell everyone you died from complications from surgery, such a tragedy. The kidney never quite took, his body rejected it. These things happen. The casual way she said it, like she was planning a dinner menu, not his murder, made Antonio's stomach turn. You're a monster, he whispered. I'm a survivor. Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact. And I'm giving you a choice, Antonio. Survive with me or disappear trying to save a girl who isn't worth saving. Choose wisely. She walked out, closing the door softly behind her. Antonio lay in the bed, his entire body trembling. Not from pain, not from weakness, from pure, overwhelming terror mixed with rage. His mother, the woman who'd raised him, taught him everything, supposedly loved him, had just threatened to kill him. Casually, easily, like it was nothing. And she'd made it clear that no one in the organization would help Sarah. She controlled too much, had too much influence. If Antonio tried to mobilize a rescue, Isabella would block it and paint him as weak, compromised, unfit to lead. Sarah would die alone, terrified, probably tortured, and Antonio would be helpless to stop it. Unless Antonio's mind began racing despite the fear coursing through him. His mother controlled half the organization, but he controlled the other half, the younger members, the ones who'd risen through the ranks during his leadership, not hers. Dear listener, what would you do in this situation? Would he risk his life to save Sarah or follow what his mother said? Now he faces a painful choice, one that could change everything. Kindly drop a comment below and advise Antonio on what to do. Should he save Sarah or stand by and watch her die?